Hi there, I'm Leisha Gravinsky. This is Saskatchewan. Okay, so it's not always easy to like our neighbors. There's the guy down the street who uses his leaf blower before 8 a.m. and the woman who lets her cat roam the block. But have you heard about the resident in Broders Annex who is feeding squirrels walnuts? It is all over Reddit. And let me tell you, people are raging. The CBC's Chris Edwards has been digging into this one. Hey, Chris.
Hello, Leisha.
This story is nuts.
We really didn't want to squirrel this story away. Should we just get all the puns out of the way now?
I think we should. I mean, really, this story writes itself, doesn't it?
It does. I felt that it was important to tell people about what's going on in Broders Annex because it does speak to an age-old neighborhood conundrum, which is how do we all live happily together with our neighbors?
Yes, tell me more. So first off, what kind of neighborhood is Broders Annex?
Broders Annex is it's just southeast of downtown. It's a pretty established neighborhood with many small bungalows built just before and right after the war. It's also a neighborhood where we're starting to see more infill development. You could also say that it's a hop, skip, and jump away from the Milky Way, which is a well-known ice cream shop here in Regina.
Okay, now I can picture it. But what exactly are neighbors concerned about?
Well, several Reddit users say that someone in the Broders Annex neighborhood is feeding squirrels whole walnuts.
And is that a big deal?
Have you looked at Reddit?
I've dug up so many damn walnuts while gardening. This person's walnut budget is insane. I find them in my gardens, garage, bushes. My friends think I'm crazy. Who has this much of a walnut supply?
I think my neighbor may be one of the walnut culprits. Do I call directly to the SWAT team to deal with her, or will the 911 operator direct my call?
Please stop. I have had to pull these out of my dog's mouths 10 plus times this summer because squirrels have been burying them all over my yard. Please switch to peanuts like normal people.
I really hope you guys get this resolved, but this is one of the funniest neighborhood problems I've seen in a while.
Okay, so we've got a squirrel issue, a walnut issue, I should say. Why did this thread pop up a couple weeks ago?
Well, the theory, and I want to emphasize that it is a theory, is that the problem is growing.
And is that it? Like, what are people saying in real life?
Well, Parker Gusway, who's one of the people who lives in the neighborhood, isn't sure it's a growing problem. I spoke to him when I canvassed the neighborhood, but he does say that it has been a thing for a few years.
I've just seen squirrels going up and down the power line squirrel highway with walnuts for years now. Found them in my backyard a bunch of times. They're all over the neighborhood.
Squirrel highway right through Broders Annex. Is there anything in the squirrel behavior that suggests they are indeed being fed walnuts?
Well, number one, the squirrels that I saw were pretty fat. That could be just, it's the fall and they're getting ready for winter. Number two, people do keep finding walnuts. I saw plenty myself. And number three, Parker Gusway says he finds them everywhere in his backyard, in his front yard, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they're under cushions or plants or in the grass, everywhere. Especially come winter, they're everywhere. Yeah, it's just kind of a nuisance. It's not really that big of a deal, I don't think, but.
But is he talking about patio furniture cushions? Is that what he means?
That is what he means, but like he said, he doesn't think it's a big deal the way people, at least on Reddit, do.
Okay, fair. But who do they know who is behind the walnut caches?
We don't know for sure, and we don't have any definitive evidence to suggest the walnuts are coming from a particular house, despite what's said online. But believe me, I canvassed the neighborhood. I spent almost an entire day there, and it was suggested that the epicenter of the walnut droppings might be near the intersection of College Avenue and Broder Street.
But again, is this bad?
Well, that's a good question. I thought I would seek out a real authority on this, so I spoke with Veronica Schroeder, who coordinates forestry, pest control, and horticulture with the city of Regina. And yes, her response to this was actually pretty simple.
Please don't feed wildlife.
Yes, Veronica's concern is not just squirrels, by the way.
We don't want people feeding wildlife like squirrels or raccoons or any other wild animal because that just encourages them to come back and become dependent on people. So we want them to be independent animals and be concerned about humans and be able to live their best lives on their own.
Right. So that's all well and good, but, the crux of this is this growing? So I did have to ask, are squirrels in general, at least from the perspective of the city of Regina, a growing problem?
We have not heard of squirrels being prolific in the past. They are not a regulated pest under the Pest Control Act in Saskatchewan, so we don't really monitor them or try and deal with them in any way.
Okay, yeah, squirrels are not rats. Rats are a pest. Squirrels are not rats. On the Reddit thread, though, I noticed people were also concerned about people because some people have nut allergies and they could come in contact with these walnuts.
Yeah, it is a concern, certainly, and I asked Veronica about that as well, and she said that it shouldn't really be a concern, especially because it's unlikely that walnuts will last into the spring. One, because they break down. Two, because the squirrels are eating them. But at the same time, lots of kids and adults do have nut allergies, and it's true that we do need to be cognizant of that.
Right, which is why Veronica maintains don't do it.
Exactly.
So what if someone is really concerned about the number of squirrels in their yard?
Well, number one, Veronica said, don't call the city. If it is a concern, a resident can call a pest control company to take a look. And now if there is an infestation of squirrels at a city park, that's a different story. It's a public place. The city, it is their responsibility to take care of that. And so the city will go take a look at that. But again, we're not talking about mice or rats. We're talking about cute squirrels. So here's Veronica's take on that.
Every animal and insect is beneficial to our ecosystem to some capacity. I am not a squirrel expert, but we should just appreciate and respect nature as the human beings that we are. Even if we're superior, they have a purpose. So be kind, but if they're a problem, call your pest control company.
Chris, thank you for this story.
You bet, Alicia.
Okay, so fat squirrels skittering across power poles, mouths stuffed with walnuts. That's not okay to some people. Kind of funny to the rest of us. But just stop and think for a moment of all the other wild animals that live among us. And what if they all like walnuts? I can think of two jaw-dropping incidents. There was the time in Saskatoon when a moose crashed into a school, or that time a bear wandered into Regina and was hanging out near downtown. So who are our neighbors really? Ryan Fisher is a curator of vertebrate zoology at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. He set up cameras throughout the city of Regina to track urban wildlife. There are similar cameras set up in Saskatoon as well. I spoke to Ryan about his research. Ryan, hello.
Hi, Alicia.
So what do you think of that walnut fiasco taking place in Regina?
Well, I would bet that there's some super fat and happy squirrels in that neighborhood in Regina.
What's your take, though, on people feeding squirrels? What's the impact of that?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Regina is we as residents of Regina have kind of set up the perfect environment for squirrels here. So, 100 years ago when people started planting trees, that's now made great habitat for squirrels. We also don't have a ton of predators in the city either to eat the squirrels and kind of keep them in check. And then we also sort of go on top of that with people providing a fairly reliable and, pretty nutritious food source for squirrels that let them kind of ride out the winter here. And it's sort of the perfect storm for, like I said, having very fat and very happy squirrels in the city.
Should people be feeding them walnuts, though?
Well, walnuts, I mean, it's my budget wouldn't allow me to feed squirrels walnuts. It is an interesting thing. Lots of people feed birds in the city, and that doesn't seem to be a problem. And it does, bring joy to people to kind of interact with wildlife. But there is definitely the downside that we start to kind of come into conflict with wildlife, and not in Regina, but in some other cities that have bears more regularly. We see, garbage cans that have to be locked and kept away and only kind of put out the day of that garbage comes along. And so, we kind of have to manage our relationship with wildlife so that they don't kind of become a negative problem for us.
You did have that one bear in Regina, though, a few months ago.
We did. That's absolutely correct. Wildlife moves in to cities because there's something good here for them. So, we've seen lots of raccoons in the city of Regina lately, and they haven't become a problem yet. But in larger cities in eastern Canada, they lock their garbage cans up tight, just so raccoons don't knock them over and start going through things. So,
how many more raccoons are you seeing in Regina?
So they do seem to have moved in here over the last, decade or maybe a little bit more. We have a project going on in Regina looking at urban wildlife, and they aren't super common here, but I think we detected them at maybe 6 or 7 of our monitoring sites across the city of Regina. And, we don't tend to come across them very often because they're most active at night, and they haven't seemed to kind of have gotten in the habit of rifling through our garbage yet, but who knows what'll happen in the future.
Yeah, but could that be coming?
It's definitely possible. Once these critters start to learn that there's an accessible and fairly regular food source for them, that's where we kind of start to run into problems with things like bears and raccoons.
So tell me more about your research project, the cameras you've got set up. Just set the scene a bit. How are you gathering this information?
Yeah, so, 10 years ago, we would go out just and stand at an area and try to listen to all the birds and look for tracks of animals and things like that. But technology has really allowed us to better monitor wildlife. And so we've got trail cameras set up around the city. So this is a trail camera that you might use for hunting and you would buy at Bass Pro here in the city. And every time an animal walks by, it triggers and it takes a picture of them. We also have microphones set up around the city. So birds are really easy to count when they're singing and when they're making noise. And so we've got microphones set up around the city as well to see what critters we're sharing the city with.
So what have you caught on camera? I mentioned the bear. I don't think you caught that bear on camera. We know that the bear did pay a visit, and that shocked me. As someone who grew up in Regina and has lived most of my life in Saskatchewan, I just could not believe that story. What has surprised you most in the research that you've been doing?
Absolutely, yeah. We were kind of disappointed. We had a camera actually. Someone had seen that bear on Ring Road by Sask Polytech, and our cameras had just come down. We don't leave them up all year. They had just come down about 2 weeks earlier. So fortunately, we missed the bear. But Regina. In terms of the cameras, lots of different animals call our city home, or at least, the outskirts of the city. So, we found things like moose moving through Regina, both whitetail and mule deer on the outskirts, but also kind of right in the middle of the city, probably following the creek. We've seen raccoons throughout the city as well. So, really diverse community of mammals that call our city home. And with our bird recordings, I think we had heard about 143 different types of birds calling Regina home.
Oh, wow. Why is it important to know what else is living among us?
Yeah, so, we kind of have this negative view of cities and how they impact wildlife. But as we're kind of starting to do more research, we're recognizing that cities can play an important role for wildlife conservation. And so you kind of need that baseline data to understand how, when the city changes, how does that influence our wildlife here?
So tell me more about what you're learning then, and how might that be challenging some of our assumptions?
Yeah, so just the sheer diversity of both birds and mammals at least suggests to me that Regina has a pretty good system of green spaces to kind of allow people and animals to coexist. So, we've got this amazing corridor around Wascana Creek that leads into Wascana Lake, kind of from the northwest part of the city down to the south or southeast part of the city. And, that allows animals to kind of move through unhindered, which is really, really great. And yeah, like I said, we saw lots of different bird diversity. And so the things that we have done by planting trees, having the shrubbery, having large green spaces like Wascana Park has really benefited wildlife in the area.
So your colleague, Katie Harris, has a theory as to why we might be seeing more activity in the cities. She's the PhD candidate in animal and poultry science at the University of Saskatchewan, who's got those cameras up in this city. Let's listen to her theory.
We pump resources into our urban green spaces, right? Like we put fertilizer, we water, we do all sorts of things to our spaces in cities that you wouldn't see typically outside of a city in a natural area. And so that is a big attractant for wildlife, not just moose, but all sorts of species, right? If you can get an area with an all-you-can-eat buffet versus an area that is, maybe a single-time dining, you're going to go to the all-you-can-eat buffet.
So Ryan, where are these all-you-can-eat buffets in the cities?
Yeah, so, for animals like birds, people who are providing bird feed for them, it's an awesome all-you-can-eat buffet, and they know where it is, and if people fill their feeders regularly, you can rely on that food source as a bird. Similarly, people who are putting out peanuts for animals, that's something that they really like to come check out.
Or walnuts, the walnuts.
Walnuts, sorry, that's right. Especially, it's even better than an all-you-can-eat buffet. That's like high dining.
And then what else?
Like Katie said, are kind of lush lawns and areas that, might be kind of managed by the city and people are gardening, and all of those things provide food sources for animals. And, sometimes we don't like it when they eat the food sources that we provide, but kind of the only reason they're there is because there's lots of food in the city, there's some places to hide, and there's few predators there.
Makes me think of all of our urban parks, even our golf courses. Now, I know that another one of your colleagues, Jordan Rustad, has been helping you at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum with your research project. And part of her work is understanding how we can better design cities in order to live with nature.
During my research, we found that wildlife was using green spaces of all sizes all throughout the city. And so that really highlights the importance of these green spaces. And green space is also very important for humans, for our physical and mental health as well.
So they serve a dual purpose. They're for us as humans, but also for the animals?
Absolutely, yeah. There's an amazing amount of research now showing, positive relationships between people's mental health and how close they are to green space, or even, how often they hear birds in their neighborhood like that. And, green space is good for people, but it also gives animals that opportunity to kind of coexist with us in an urban setting.
How does that, though, potentially create tension? So the Regina, the bear roaming around Regina, that created some tension. There was a moose in Saskatoon that crashed through a school. I think many people remember that story. And so what about the downside of trying to live together with some pretty large animals?
Absolutely. And I think it really comes down to educating people about how to act and how to be around wildlife. So, we're not used to interacting with bears down here in Regina, but other communities, quite honestly, live with bears. They've learned, about garbage cans and keeping food away from bears so that they can kind of go about their business. And I think that's where sort of the being able to coexist between wildlife and people really comes, is sort of training us a little bit better on how to interact with wildlife.
So what advice would you have so that we can coexist well together? I keep thinking about that Reddit thread and the walnuts. How can we be good neighbors with these creatures?
Exactly. Well, I think, there's a couple things. Keeping food sources kind of away or inaccessible to animals, I think is really important. So, maybe don't put your garbage out the night before so a raccoon can get into it. Leave it, put it out the next morning a couple hours before the garbage man comes through. Doing things like that are fairly easy on our end can prevent some of those conflicts from happening.
And will we start to see new patterns as we see a changing climate? I keep thinking about climate change and how that might shift things, or how that might change the types of animals that we're seeing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I think as part of our research, we're hoping to keep monitoring wildlife in Regina so we can kind of start to see how things change, or maybe they'll stay the same as the city around us changes and as the climate changes. But we've started to see different animals call Regina home. Likely because of habitat changes, or maybe the winters are a little bit easier on them. But, the squirrels are a great example of that. They're a critter from eastern Canada that has made their way west to Regina. They weren't here as of, sort of the mid-1970s. And so something here has changed that has attracted that particular animal to our city.
It's the guy with the big budget. The big walnut budget.
Exactly, the big walnut budget, and also who knows, winters are maybe a little bit milder, and so they're able to kind of eke out, well, more than eke out. I think they're doing pretty well here with both of those things happening.
Ryan, so good to talk to you today. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Leisha.
So, to feed squirrels or not to feed squirrels? What's your take? You can email thisis@cbc.ca. I'm Leisha Grabinski. Thanks to Chris Edwards, Ethan Williams, and Stephen Adams. Don't forget, Fridays on the podcast, we talk politics with the CBC's Adam Hunter. Make sure you're following This is Saskatchewan on your favorite podcast feed, and we'll talk to you again in a few days.